when we all are in it for growth, development, learning, and helping each other and learning from each other, then I think we will have a winning system on two levels. One being that you are growing and learning, and two, you're more likely to win more games when there's a more frictionless system.
Hello and welcome to Fit Kids Conversations. I'm your host, David Jacobson, and today I'm here with Dr. Andrea Wieland. Andrea is an Olympic field hockey player in her past and now does fantastic mental training that impacts fitness and health, and I'm very, very excited for this conversation. Thanks for joining me, Andrea.
Thank you, David. I'm really delighted to be here. You've had some amazing guests, so to be amongst them is fantastic and for a super important cause. So I'm glad to be here.
Well, thanks. I appreciate you saying that. And let's dive into, some of the Olympians that we have talked to. They all have shared with me unique Olympic experiences. What was your peak experience as an Olympian, whether something on the field or just the procession, into the stadium for opening ceremonies or whatever?
It's a great question. There are several highlights. They were in my hometown of Atlanta, Georgia. So I had the opportunity to train 6 miles from where I grew up, which is unusual. I was so happy to have them be in my hometown. Some people were like, well, didn't you want to travel? And I was like, no, this is amazing to have a hometown Olympics, which then was able to draw 25,000, fans and friends that I'd never played on, in front of 25,000 people. So that was pretty cool. Yes, opening ceremonies was all the energy that you can imagine. It was pretty spectacular. So that made it feel real. And there's a picture that one of my friends caught of the athletes coming in and was able to find me. And, the smile couldn't have been brighter or bigger. We ended up getting close to the dream team, which were, of course, the basketball players that we'd come up to their waistline. It's just fun to be around them. But I guess my Olympic glory moment was getting in the second half. I was a goalkeeper, so got into the second half. And we were playing against Australia, who was at that time the most dominant team for the decade. They won all the golds in the World Cups and Olympics and everything else. And even Sam Walker wrote about them as one of the legacy teams, the top 10 legacy teams in his book, Captain Class. So we were playing against that dominant team, and I shut them out second half.
Yes, a clean sheet for
That's
our
right.
for our guests. That's awesome. Where have you gone since then? The journey from post Olympics to where you're at now.
I played on the US team for 12 years, and so was still training, but I was also going to grad school, and also had my business winning system. So I was maybe doing a little too much on my plate there, but I was getting my PhD. I also did my MBA within the grad school time frame. And then I did both in order to create. I was always been pretty entrepreneurial and created a performance and health center, which the idea was sort of Mayo Clinic meets the Olympic Training Center. So we worked with executive athletes on that same concept of the team around the individual or the team around the team. So we had a 360 advantage approach where we had the medical, sports psychology, executive coaching, nutrition, physical therapy, and exercise physiology. So that was a lot of fun doing the full comprehensive assessment and then doing the coaching, after the assessment. But that whole philosophy of what I learned as an Olympian, I took everywhere I went. So after the Performance and Health Center, I went to IMG Academy and was the head of mental conditioning there. And we had all those parts, but we were a little bit siloed. So I just encouraged and from the leadership perspective of how we can become more of a team around the team. And so I felt like I helped move the needle there. And then went on to be director of sports performance at University of Pennsylvania. Same concept, get that team around the team, tightened up, and felt like we could deliver better services to our student athletes who were having very demanding academic and athletic lives. So it's a model that I've always been close to my heart.
At IMG, I imagine you would have come in contact with a variety of sports, right? And I'm curious if you could summarize or generalize about what are the differences in the mentalities across various sports. You know, if you notice that athletes in one sport lean one way, athletes in another sport lean another way, or have particular pain points in terms of mental, whether it's focus or just overall mental health that you encountered.
Well, it's a great question. I mean, every sport does seem to have their kind of culture, if you will. And I hope this doesn't come across in the wrong way, but the lacrosse boys kind of are a bit broish, a bro coat culture.
It doesn't come across wrong to me at all.
Let's see, soccer, um, sometimes had their, flashy players, but also, recognize they had to be teaming together. And of course, the individual sports of tennis and golf, a lot of the golfers were, quieter and, you know, more to themselves. And well, tennis, there was just a whole range, but yeah, I do think that there's something interesting about the sport. And back to the Olympics, just being in the Olympic Village, where you see the different body types of the different sports. And I remember vividly this almost cartoon character looking like he should have been in the movies, a Russian wrestler next, I mean, just gigantic, just huge and buff, like he looked like the Hulk. And he was right next to a little gymnast at the salad bar. And you just, you just see the different body types. But look, I think the pain points were similar across a lot of the sports in terms of, wanting to develop that consistent confidence to be able to perform, really believe in themselves and not rely on their results of how they did as their source of confidence. Instead, rely on their preparation and their process to be ready to perform and allow the performance, to unfold. So I think confidence, I think a lot of them were fearful of disappointing either their coaches, teammates, or parents if they didn't perform well. Those are just some of the things that, and then, kind of the commitment level of being able to show up day in, day out to practice and training and eating right and sleeping and doing all the components that go into that elite level performance. For some, it was like, is this really for you or is this for somebody else? And helping them sort of look at that and realign and kind of shift more towards that intrinsic motivation.
Yeah, that's an interesting topic because I was speaking with somebody a couple days ago about Andre Agassi and how much he, in his book, kind of talked about how he didn't really like tennis, wasn't doing it for himself. And I've heard so many other athletes say that, and then many others say, like, you absolutely have to love the game. If you don't love what you're doing, you won't keep up with it. So I'm curious, especially in your work, whether IMG, whatever you noticed in the Olympics or in your later practice, do you work with people who like really don't want to be doing what they're doing and yet still somehow need to overcome that and perform?
Yeah, I think what I have found in my work is that a lot of the reason they're not loving their sport is because they're being so incredibly hard on themselves that they're not really even enjoying it. So that competitive, high achievement oriented approach or mindset has been helpful, but now it's starting to get in the way. So I can think of a high school basketball player that I just completed some work with who wants to go on and walk on to a high level division 1 team, but he was just absolutely miserable playing. And then when he made a mistake, everything would, his body language, his interaction with his teammates would all just sort of collapse in on himself. And he was point guard and he was supposed to be a, team leader. So we worked on, helping him recognize when he's playing really well, what is he doing, saying to himself, how is he feeling, get that optimized self. And then what is he doing when he's not playing well? And seeing the things that he's actually in control over and focusing on the things that he can control and letting go of the things that he can't control. So that's kind of a standard process of helping people detach from the results and the outcome, allow those to take care of themselves by taking care of the process and the things that they can control. Then they start having more enjoyment and remembering why they love the sport to be.
So let's focus on the that younger part of the spectrum for a little bit. Can you talk about the sorts of problems, challenges faced by the younger end of your clientele, whether that is stuff that is kind of new, uniquely to this age group, such as social media, or other pressures, societal pressures that you tend to see?
So I don't work with the elementary, middle school aged kids, but what I am seeing and hearing about from coaches and parents is such an early pressure and early specialization for the sport. So I was a kid who grew up playing a lot of different sports. I mean, I played 4 sports in high school, and research has borne out that the ones who make it to the elite Olympic level tend to have been multi-sport athletes. It gives them a break from just one sport year round. It keeps them from overuse injuries and the repetition. It keeps things fresh. It gives them a new group. It gives them a new coach. There's so many positives that come from being a multi-sport athlete. But I think the clubs, because coaches have become professionalized and there's all these travel clubs, that they need to pay their coaches, right? So they end up, it's a both and. It's from parents, it's from clubs. Kids kind of caught in between wanting to have a big dream and goal met, trusting the adults that they're going to get them there. And I think the pressures to be performing and traveling under the age of 14 may be part of the problem when the kid gets older and they're sick of playing and they don't want to play anymore. So all that money being invested and all that time and energy to then not, maybe not get the college scholarship that we've all been dreaming about, and then you don't want to play anymore. How have we served um, the growth and development of the athlete? So I would say, yeah, I think the young 14 and below, and even some of the long-term athlete development models will show that The 9-year-olds are supposed to be having fun and learning about bonding and learning about lots of different positions, not the being the, not pressuring to perform at 9.
It sounds though like by the time any of these kids or their parents find drandreawieland.com, the kid's already burnt out.
It can be that. It can be that. They're not having as much fun. All the eggs have been put in this basket, and they're so afraid of setbacks and disappointments and feeling like they failed their parents' investment in them if they don't play well, if they're not perfect every single time, if they're not the starter, if they're not if they're not getting all the playing time, which they don't have control over. I mean, I think that's the fear is, I'm going to disappoint when, my family has invested, all this time, energy, money. Yeah.
At Fit Kids, we are sport agnostic, right? It's essential physical literacy and building all parts of the body and mind through physical activity. So there are, core exercises, there are endurance, there are flexibility, all these different traits. So especially in terms of a multi-sport athlete and that protection against injury, all the other things that you cited from the value of not being a single sport athlete. What is your take on kind of the need for physical literacy and all of the different functions that I just mentioned?
Oh, I love it. No, I love that you're doing all that. Just learning to move your body in space in different ways, different angles is so foundational, to just feeling good in your home, right? So, yeah, when parents ask me, about, they think they have a pretty good athlete, I definitely suggest to get into gymnastics early because it's doing all those kind of running and jumping. But I'm sure you all are doing some throwing and kicking and some other kinds of things. And we actually at IMG started because of the early specialization emphasis at IMG, where the parents were paying and investing, for their child to learn that one sport with the younger kids and even some of the older kids too. We were doing some of the same things and the same movement patterns that probably you all do with Fit Kids early. So I think of movement as, if it's a big round circle, that the training and the sport is within the movement circle. And so just going out, even for adults who may be listening to this, if you go for your 1 hour of exercise and then you sit for the next 10 to 12 hours without doing any kind of movement or walking or taking a break from the sitting, I would certainly encourage getting up and getting, moving in multi planes, whether it's even dancing just for a mental break is going to be a healthy decision.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about some of the mental work that athletes have to do and your work in specific. First of all, if you can tell us about that logo behind you and how that ties in with winning systems and what it represents and everything. And just talk for a few minutes about your work applying mental health to sports and fitness.
So that symbol there is, a new logo for winning systems, and it's basically, I'm creating an online course, a book, and some webinars, and a guidebook that all kind of go with each other. But it's, mental training for parents, athletes, and coaches. So the idea is that is a system, and you can kind of see the parent, athlete, coach, on the outside, and in the middle is the star, and the star is, that common goal that we all have when we entered sports, when we signed up for sports, is to have a positive sporting experiences. Coaches want it for the athletes. They love seeing athletes, have the joy of expressing themselves and implementing the training and the, skill and the tactics and the strategies that they've been working on all week to play well against the team. The parents sign up for the kid to develop character and to connect and bond and learn about themselves and do something hard and learn to navigate what that, I mean, physical fitness and breathing heavy and doing all the things that you do to become a great athlete. And then, of course, the kids sign up to be with their friends and to have a good experience. And somehow we've gotten a bit away from that with all the multiple reasons of why, and gotten sometimes maybe some athletes get and their parents get a bit self-focused and it's only about their child and their child's experience as opposed to the system, and that when we all are in it for growth, development, learning, and helping each other and learning from each other, then I think we will have a winning system on two levels. One being that you are growing and learning, and two, you're more likely to win more games when there's a more frictionless um, system. So my favorite quote from Rudyard Kipling, he wrote The Jungle Book, and he says, "The strength of the pack is in the wolf, and the strength of the wolf is in the pack." So that's the concept of winning systems.
Can you talk about what's inside the system, the content, and what messages parents, coaches, and athletes will be directly getting out of this?
Part one of it is the confidence series, and it's confidence through self-mastery. And it starts with the human first identity as the base of the triangle. So in my previous work and what I've seen in sports psychology is we go straight up to the confident performer, which is on top. And so it's actually flipped upside down. So the triangle is not very stable when you're only looking at performance for athletics. But if we start with a human first identity, and there's several components of that: socio-cultural, natural intelligence, your own unique patterns and tendencies. So these are genetic and learned and environmental and all those influences. And then we talk about choice identities, which is who do you want to be in work, energy, love, and your role. So those are kind of the big buckets. And we align your values and your virtues with your behaviors. Then we go into healthy performer, whole person, which are the 6 fundamentals around being a healthy performer, whether you're a parent or a coach or an athlete or a member of the team around the team or administrator or teacher or, any of those folks. So basic health being breathing, sleeping, fueling and hydrating, moving, then socio-emotional connection, so connection, and then communing with nature. So having those, as much of all 6 of those in your daily, can then boost you into the confident performer, which goes into the mental skills. So when you have the inevitable setback of and disappointment, it's not a matter of if that's going to happen, it's a matter of when. So when that happens, you don't fall as far. But if you're only focused on confidence, then you and it doesn't go so hot, you're on a unstable surface.
Wonderful metaphor, and it's got a lot of richness inside of it as well. So
Thank you.
thanks for that. Let's talk a little bit about the way you hope kids respond to that, both in terms of their athletic performance and in terms of how they carry themselves through the world as people.
So the reason I included the parents and coaches is that they are some of the strongest influences on the child. So we want to all be speaking the same language before, so what I want is kind of that consistency and congruency so they can really, when they do have the setback or they do slip up or they, could have been made a more optimal choice, then we have language on how to help the child. So my hope is that they have more mental health and more joy and more sense of freedom, have a better sense of who they are and what they can contribute, and recognize that they are not alone, that they belong to a system. We all belong, whether we think we do or not. We are not separate. That's that human first identity piece where we're all connected, whether we want to be or not. The part uh, is to tune into that and know that you're contributing and you are receiving from the system. So it just hopefully it just brings more sense of safety and belonging, so people can be their full expression of themselves and give in the ways that they can to be contributors.
So you just triggered in the way you talked about that, the full expression of their selves, which is what I've heard complaints about from LGBTQ athletes, athletes of color who are playing predominantly white sports. Do you have ways to address that?
Yeah, that's part of the socio-cultural identities piece when we're doing the identity work in the human first. And sort of the salience of and it's called the addressing model. It's Pam Helms has done some work called the addressing model, which is age to disability born with or disability acquired, race, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, some indigenous stuff, kind of generational or yeah. So what are some of those salient pieces where you affiliate with different sociocultural identities that give you strength and courage to face some of the challenges, and it helps others who may be in a more privileged position understand themselves and understand others in order to um, not be judging, but see the strengths in those various sociocultural identities.
Dr. Wieland, we've got just a few minutes left, and I would like to turn over the floor to you just to, talk about anything else that you feel is relevant to your work and our work where it intersects with Fit Kids, and anything else you've got on your mind.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I really enjoyed our time together. And to me, Fit Kids is foundational. The work that you all doing is foundational to the mental health and performance kinds of things that we're really talking about. And it's also fit adults. So, what I say to coaches and to parents is that they are the exemplars of the things that um, these students, these athletes, these children will pick up on. So what you do speaks so loudly, I can't hear what you're saying. So aligning your core values, doing the work around that, understanding your sense of self is going to really facilitate the mental health and performance of your child. So if you wanted to learn more about me, it's Dr. Andrea Wieland, which is Wieland. So drandreawieland.com. Definitely invite you there. Hoping to have a book out in July, but it'll be out when it's ready. And then I'll be offering some online courses, and certainly you can get in touch for either individual, team, organizational coaching and support, whether it is business or a sports organization, and have webinars for parents, athletes, and coaches to help them understand the system's approach for developing confident performers through self-mastery.
Terrific. Thanks so much for your time this afternoon, and look forward to seeing your book and all else that you produce.
Thank you, David. It
All
was a
right.
delight to be here.